What's up everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Custom Track Wiiki Showcase, a series where I talk about some custom content made for Mario Kart Wii throughout the month that I find interesting. Today's episode is on everything uploaded to the wiki during June 2022. I mentioned in the last video that May was a pretty calm month for CT creation, but June was more of what we've come to expect for wiki activity in 2022. We have 8 tracks to cover in depth, but 13 things for the rapid fire segment that I want to briefly mention. Let's jump right into it. The first track we're going to be covering is Shy Guy Skies by Squire Turnbull and David Slane, originally uploaded on the 1st of the month. Squire Turnbull is the creator with the most appearances in this series, with this being the 11th track of his that I've covered from this year alone. His output has been steady and phenomenal. For this track, he decided to team up with David Slane, who I've mentioned a couple times in the series. He's dropped a few tracks and led his own competition as well, the first come first serve event to be exact. The track fittingly takes place in the sky where racers jump through clouds and pirate ships owned by Shy Guys, and once again we see an incredible track from Squire. This course really reminds me of Thump Bump Forest in its design structure, where the open outdoor area and the closed-in indoor area are modeled very similarly to each other, only the indoor section is at the start of this track. I do really like Thump Bump Forest though, so that's definitely a positive for this track as well. There are very distinct sections to traverse when playing the track, and it makes it a very enjoyable experience. The switch up with the floating bridge separating the bottom and top path adds a lot of depth to races that isn't normally experimented with in most custom tracks. There's a lot of fun ramps and tricks to this dynamic design, with many turns that all still manage to feel purposeful, and that's in part due to the theme. Sky theming is always a blast to see, and this track really sets itself apart by adding the ship element and equating it to the Shy Guys specifically. There are tracks like GBA Sky Garden and Cloud Top Cruise from Nintendo with similar theming, but this track definitely feels unique in comparison to those, with the distinct cloud sections and how the ships play into the design as well. It also comes down to the unique visuals, and the detail put into the visual experience is phenomenal. It's really something you come to expect with every new Squire track, as I've noticed he's a great artist and makes a ton of textures himself. His tracks are always filled with his own Nintendo themed advertisements, and they always look amazing. The scenery is never rushed, with a notable example in this track being the room in the first ship with the cheering Shy Guys. It's a small detail, but it adds a lot to the atmosphere, similar to some of the animated propellers and the raising smoke on the bottom path on the second ship. I also gotta mention the skybox, as it looks incredible, very unique, and it really feels like we're racing in the sky when this is the backdrop. My final note will be the usage of objects, as there aren't too many, but they're used very well. Of course, we have the floating platform in the middle of the track to split racers between the two paths, but we also have the retextured cataquacks into those crocodile things from those Mario games that are very nice, and we have some background Shy Guys too. This track is incredibly well put together overall. This was submitted to CTGP, but has been rejected for now due to some draw distance issues with the ships and a few design hiccups. But if the creators were to dedicate their time to fixing up the design and thinking of workarounds for the draw distance issues, I think this has a decent chance of getting added. Great work here, Squire and David. Can't wait to see what both of you have in store for this year as we move into the second half. Our next track comes from a creator who once disappeared from the community but has returned to finish up some Mario Kart Wii projects of his. The track is Harvest Harbor, made by Jaden MKW and designed by Orange Yoshi, with the track being uploaded on the 7th of the month. Jaden is a creator that I have not mentioned in this series before, and that's because he left the modding scene late 2021 and only came back now with the release of this track. Before then, he was a very active member in the CT Jam community, releasing some of the best jam courses ever, like Wario's Cosmic Construction and Pianta Plaza, to name a couple. Orange Yoshi is another creator I have not mentioned in this series, though for this track he was solely the designer and Jaden put the whole track together. This track was originally designed for the 4th edition of Citrus's CT Secret Santa event from back in late 2021, but it was never finished until just this month. The track notably combines elements from Maple Treeway and DS Delfino Square, which Jaden has said was 2 of his favorite tracks in the game. This is a simpler track, but after playing it, I do highly recommend this for anyone considering it for distributions, as it's super fun to time trial, and I imagine online races on this would be a blast too. It's simple but has some depth to the shortcuts that I think would capture the interest of many people when playing this track for the first time. I'll start with the visuals because they kind of lead into my point of the track overall. It's a combination of textures from the regular tracks in the game, which isn't bad at all, but I've seen a lot of people recently try and branch out since they want their tracks to look unique. I don't think it hinders this track at all though, because this feels really nostalgic with some elements from that older style of track creation without the slowdown of poor design or modeling that also came with some older tracks. This is an extremely polished but nostalgic track. There are even bits and pieces of exploration which remind me of that Custom Track in Troy's old Mario Kart Wii videos, so that's always cool to see. The design is also really nice, and I'll admit this was one of a few tracks this month that I spent a decent chunk time trialing trying to go for a good time. I think it's a combination of this track being rather short, but also having fun shortcuts, with one where you can bounce off the grass like the DS Desert Hills ending cut, and another dot cut that requires a shroom as well. It takes inspiration from the regular tracks for sure, but it doesn't copy the exact strats, which is what I like to see. To explain further, there are both components of the Delfino Square double, but you can't combine them in this track. You have to choose one or the other, which is interesting. Like I said, I was time trialing this one for a while to try and get a good time for my second channel. I didn't get one, but I do recommend you guys try this one out if you like time trialing for sure. For a grand return to the community, there isn't a ton to say on the track itself, but it is still a banger, and I'm happy to see Jaden back to release some more tracks. He did say he'd stay distanced from the community in places like the CT Jam server, which is unfortunate to see for sure, but a return nonetheless is still great to see. Awesome stuff here, Jaden. Harvest Harbor wasn't the only creation that Jaden uploaded this month though, as he also brought a battle stage to the wiki as well. This is the version 2.0 update of Super Mario 64 Castle Grounds by Jaden MKW, which was uploaded to the site on the 11th of June. If I'm not wrong, this is the first custom battle stage that I'm covering in this series. I'm not sure why that is, but I guess it's because not many battle stages have been made this year. I wasn't avoiding them on purpose though, I promise. Anyways, this stage was originally designed for the hide and seek game mode with no battle functionality in version 1.0 when that released in late 2021, but Jaden basically converted this into a battle stage here, which was the right call because this works really well in both battle modes. I feel like custom battle stages have always been an underappreciated art form, since it's not like these types of stages get a chance in a distribution like CTGP with the community's mass appeal. And even when people delve into other custom track distributions that have their own version of battle mode with custom battle stages, those distributions still focus on the tracks as opposed to the battle mode. But this stage is still really nice. It's a smart location for a battle stage since it's Nintendo related, and I could definitely have seen them attempting a stage like this in a game like Mario Kart DS for example. There's a lot of jumps, rails, ramps, and defining sections to make this stand out as a stage and give it some depth, which is nice. I like these asymmetrical battle layouts that don't feel forced to be weird and different, and this toes that line perfectly. I can see a lot of the action happening in the water area below the bridge, and I think it's good when stages have something like that. Usually free-for-all shooting games have an explicit area where most of the action takes place, like, and I'm sorry for this example, Fortnite and Tilted Towers, so it's cool to see that here. Also, not to mention, but the visuals are great with the serene nighttime theming and the great texture job. The water is beautiful. Basically, if you have a distribution that has custom battle stages, add this one. It deserves a spot. I remember I did want to make a video ranking every custom battle stage that's been uploaded to the wiki, as I thought that would be a fun side project, but I scrapped it a while ago since I didn't feel confident that I'd be able to rank the stages against each other that well, as someone who never really gravitated to the original battle mode. I also feel like I'd be missing out if I only got to play these stages offline with bots, opposed to actually seeing what games would be like without relying on authors to perfect the convoluted system of creating enemy routes for battle stages. Just thought I'd mention that in case that inspires any of you or something. I could throw anyone a list of all the battle stages if they were interested. Great stuff, Jaden, on both of your contributions this month. I'm looking forward to your future projects this year. Coming up next, we have a new take of a familiar track by a familiar creator. This is 3DS Bowser's Castle by ZPL, which was uploaded to the site on June 14th. ZPL is a creator we should all know by now. He's been really pushing the community into the modern direction of CTs with his distinct style of track creation using Blender, and his knack for creating incredible tracks in incredibly short time frames. I actually haven't covered many tracks of his in depth this year, mainly because he's been hyper focused on retro tracks, which I've made no secret I'm not as interested in as original designs. But after seeing his version of 3DS Bowser's Castle, I knew I had to talk about it. This take of the track is much flatter to accommodate for Mario Kart Wii racing, and I think it works beautifully. You can really tell how amazing the proportioning is when you start driving the track. The flatter design does wonders to make some areas more accessible during races, and just making the track a lot more fun to drive overall. The starting area with the 3 branching paths is a great example of this. You can decide to take the top path or bottom path any lap since you can just hop off the sides, and it's not modeled to give a ton of airtime. I can't stress how much I love it. Everything else was approached perfectly as well, akin to the CTGP version but even more polished here. Notably, the last turn and ramp are more satisfying to drive. The visuals are also really good, which is typical for ZPL tracks, and the objects were great too. They add a good amount of tension as obstacles, though I do think the spinning log should probably be longer, but that's my only nitpick here. This is a very short segment, but I really don't have much else to say. It's a ZPL retro that was approached perfectly. I definitely think this deserves an inclusion in CTGP, and this was submitted to the pack, so it will be interesting to see how it fares in the submission process. I'm pretty hopeful that it will make it to the pack though, as the reception so far has been pretty positive from what I've seen. Amazing work as always, ZPL. Our next track is a smaller update to a course that was previously uploaded to the site, but still a track that I had a lot to say on, so I thought I'd talk about it here. This is We Play Tanks by Rawbox Gaming, which was originally uploaded to the site in mid-2020, but was updated on the 19th of the month. That's right, if you haven't seen this before, it's a custom track based on the Tanks minigame in We Play, made by Brawlbox Gaming, who I have not talked about in this series before. He's a very talented creator that hasn't made a ton of custom tracks, but he made Royal Rainbow, which just recently got added to CTGP, so you guys are probably familiar with some of his work. This track has been in the making since 2020, but got remade back in February and received a decently sized update this month to add some nice lighting and change some shortcuts, along with adding and changing a couple objects. The best aspect to this course has got to be the theming. Making a track based on the Tanks minigame is a tall task since it's a cherished and beloved Nintendo related minigame that is also very unique in visual style without an obvious way to translate the original into a racing game. But it wasn't a tall enough task for Brawlbox, as he nailed this version in my opinion, going above and beyond what he needed to do to make the ultimate Tanks track. Let's start with something that I don't usually start with in these segments, the objects. These objects add so much to the track and really give the whole course its depth. The tanks replacing the Moonview highway cars is smart, and the object itself was approached perfectly. The way they ride onto the track and how the markings denote the lines that they take makes them intuitive to dodge but still a worthy obstacle for the course. I also really like the bomb explosions on the ground that can be triggered from green shells and from racers driving into them. I really like the out-of-the-box thinking it took from Brawlbox to approach this object too. If you think about it, the tanks over the cars make sense. As you remodel the car, you determine the route that the car would take, and bam, the object is in the track. Don't get me wrong, that's still a tough process, but it doesn't require that much of that out-of-the-box thinking of taking an idea and applying it to the limited amount of objects that this game has to offer. I wasn't entirely sure what object Brawlbox would have replaced to get the stationary explosive bombs on the track, but if you couldn't guess what he did, he simply replaced the bomb car from Moonview Highway and made it stationary. I don't think I've seen another track try this idea before, but it works perfectly, and I have to really commend Brawlbox for the idea and execution. The objects are wonderful and a big highlight to the track for sure. Moving on to the visuals, the scenery also enhances the We Play feeling with the distinct wood texturing and a very monotonous brown color palette similar to the original game. The new lighting that Brawlbox added in this version really enhances the visual presentation as well. This is easily identifiable as the Tanks minigame from the visuals alone, and the unique visual style in comparison to every track in the game sets us apart as well. Moving on to the design, we see something very simple and blocky, but it is certainly effective. And when you stop to think about it, the blocky design makes sense in the context of a Tanks track, as that minigame was also very blocky. Comparing this design to the older, more dynamic version of this track, this design makes a lot more sense. What really sets this design apart though from other simpler tracks is the shortcuts and how smartly they were implemented into this track. There's the shroomless ramp strat at the start that doubles as a 2-shroom shortcut if you shroom off to the right side. Side note, cool to see cuts that require 2 shrooms, as it's pretty uncommon in Nintendo tracks I find. There's a shroom shortcut with the wood ramp around that 2-shroom shortcut as well, so it gives more racers more options during the race, and all those shortcuts are at the front half of this very short course, which I think is good for balancing reasons. Shortcuts at the start make the ending more impactful, and it creates a better flow to the track in my opinion. There's an ending shortcut with the tank where you can trick off to the right and save some time, but this is also the most risky shortcut in the track, and I like the balance of risk and reward when deciding to stick with the beginning shortcut or deciding to attempt that ending cut. I can really see this design making for some fun races online with these unique cuts that are fun to learn and take. The track as a whole is fun to drive, and while simple blockier modeling in CTs can be risky, it does not hinder my enjoyment whatsoever on this track. The design just makes sense and it's fun to play. I'm really happy to see this track be released in this polished state. I feel like I have a connection to the track in a sense, since I remember the original version was submitted to CTGP at the same time that Dark Matter Fortress was, and they both got accepted by the council at the same time. I was hoping to see this track make it out of the needs fixes state it was in, but sadly it struggled to make it past that stage even after it had a complete redesign. This version was rejected by council, which is unfortunate to see, as I think it would have been great to see this track in CTGP. I could have seen it becoming popular in a similar vein to Desktop Dash and Slot Circuit, but obviously I like this track much more than those two in a competitive sense. But regardless, this is an amazing track, and I don't want the unfortunate rejection this received to undermine Brawlbox's accomplishments here. He made a Wii Play Tanks track that lives up to the name. Incredible work here, Brawlbox, and I'm looking forward to any future projects of yours. Next, we have another update to discuss, but this time to a track that is currently in CTGP by authors independent from the original creator. This is version 2.0 of Jungle Ruins, originally made by Mr. E99 but was updated by SpearX5544, Bugsy, and Jasper. The original track was uploaded in 2014, but this update came to the site on June 20th. Jungle Ruins is a very interesting track in CTGP's catalog since it's always been in the pack, but I've barely seen it acknowledged at all in the community. I always happen to pick it because I used to always pick Jungle Cliff and it was in the same cup on the alphabetical track list, but it's far from being a bad track. I do actually quite like it, and this update does an incredible job at improving it. In essence, SpearX started retexturing the track and made some KMP fixes, Bugsy added the light map and some other visual details, and Jasper helped to fix issues that the two ran into while making the update, and I think the changes really speak for themselves. The original Jungle Ruins was a good track with a great design, but it really did lack in the visual department, and I'm not blaming Mr. E for that at all since it was a track released in 2014, and it actually looked pretty good for that standard, but as a track that is still in the pack 8 years later, it needed a touch up, and this was the perfect approach to it. This has the perfect visual palette of feeling modern but staying true to the original and keeping a more unique visual style, and it really emphasizes the design and atmosphere. An update like this gives me newfound respect for the original since these guys didn't really do much to update this, and they didn't need to. The design was always really good, and now we have some really great modern visuals to complement it. This is a great example of how much a light map can enhance a track's atmosphere as well, and I knew the light map here would be great with Bugsy's name attached to the update. When you go into the lava room in the CTGP version, there's not much to it, but if you go into the lava room here, it's super red and dark other than the light that the lava would be emitting. It just looks warm in there now, that's the best way to put it. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say. I'm especially impressed with SpearX here, as he seems to have been the driving force behind this update, and I haven't seen his name attached to many other custom track projects before. Updating a CTGP track is a tall task, but he did a great job. He does do a lot of sunset textures for the regular tracks, which I didn't realize, but I'm glad he put some of that technical ability into updating this track. It panned out perfectly, and I believe this is in the running to be in CTGP, so I can't wait to see it in the pack. Great work SpearX, Bugsy, and Jasper for your work here. Similar to Wii Play Tanks, there was another smaller scale update uploaded to the site that would normally constitute a mention in the rapid fire portion, but I had a lot to say on the track as well, so I thought I'd cover it in this section. This is Super Bell Circuit by Squadaloo, which was originally uploaded last year, but was updated on the 22nd of the month. Squadaloo is a creator I've talked about a few times in this series, like when he released the Emerald Coast track back in January. He's a very talented creator who's been making some great tracks, most notably some Mario Kart 8 Deluxe CTs that have been going somewhat viral online, like his Green Hill Zone track that I've seen floating around Twitter. This track, Super Bell Circuit, is themed around the first stage in Super Mario 3D World, Super Bell Hill, with some notable elements from that game, like the clear pipes, trees, and cat-themed surroundings. This design and presentation just screams Nintendo in the best way possible. This really feels like an easy introductory circuit course for new Mario Kart games, from the theme to the actual design. If we start with the theme here, it's one of the best aspects to the track. It's something Nintendo related for one, and the presentation was nailed perfectly. The Super Bell idea has been very prominent in modern Nintendo games, so I think seeing the Super Bell trees, cat Goombas, the clear pipe, the wavy road section before the clear pipe, the general blocky shaping in the background, and the textures, especially the boost panel texture, will resonate with a lot of people that end up playing the track. If Nintendo made a course with this theme for a new Mario Kart, which would be very plausible considering how much they like the Super Bell theming, it would be like this. I'll hit on the visuals next. They're not over the top with detailed light maps and whatnot, but the choices for texturing are really good like I said, and the lighting stays familiar to most circuit type courses in the game. I think Squadaloo emulated the visual lighting of something like the Luigi circuit really well for this track. That brings me to the design, which I think is the real star of the show here in its subtlety. Here's why I think so. The track starts on the spiral with minimal off-road, giving racers some time to pull some items before the race really starts. Then it moves into an open space where items can be used and overtaking can happen, which then moves into the wavy road section and the clear pipe that has no shortcuts and results in more enclosed gameplay and generally calming finishes for the laps. I think this type of design is very balanced for online races as opposed to something where there's a big cut at the end or a ton of off-road in general. This track fills a niche of being a more general circuit type track without becoming too unbalanced due to an abundance of grass shortcuts. Each section is distinct and doesn't drag on more than it has to. The design makes complete sense and context to the theme, and the track is just fun to drive. There's no other way to put it. This track would be perfect for distribution, so let's talk about CTGP. An old version of this track was submitted to the pack, but was denied unfortunately for a few reasons, but the update that dropped this month does address some of the critiques that the CTGP Council had at the time. The middle section is shorter here, which makes the pacing much better, and the smoother modeling does a ton to improve the track. The pipes and some of the roads are much nicer here than they were when this was first reviewed. Squadaloo did say that he probably wouldn't submit this to CTGP again since he wasn't sure if he wanted to deal with the feedback and review process, which I understand, but I'd like to just say that I think this update would have a good chance of changing Council's mind and getting it through the door. That's obviously my personal opinion, and I can't guarantee that the Council would accept it this time, but I do want to throw that out there as a possibility since I would love to see this in CTGP. But ultimately, it's Squadaloo's decision, and I'm only speaking to how I feel. Regardless, incredible work here, Squadaloo. I'm looking forward to more of your projects, whether they're for Mario Kart Wii or Mario Kart 8, because your work has been phenomenal. The final track we have to talk about is a very interesting course, to say the least. This is Sonic CD Special Stage 1 by Villain, which was uploaded to the site on the 23rd. This is Villain's first custom track, but they've posted some other things to the site like a couple of battle stages and some textures as well. This track, as you might have guessed, is based on those extra levels from Sonic CD with those distinct crazy visuals. The track was actually designed with Formula Kart Wii in mind due to how short it is, which I didn't know before I tried the track out, but it definitely makes sense. Since that game mode requires you to go around the track 50 times, I could see a track like this being a ton of fun for a mode like that. But despite that, the track itself in normal Mario Kart Wii racing is also very fun. Admittedly, this is a hard track to grasp at first. The visuals are all over the place and it's not exactly clear what is what. For example, the boost panel and ramp texture aren't very clear. But even if that makes the track unsuitable for a pack like CTGP, I still think it's fun to play and really figure out how it works and what you can do in it. The visuals might be the best part of the track. The skybox is amazing as it animates between red and blue, and it doesn't move along with the racer, which is an interesting effect and it's very nice. There are also many 8-bit Sonic themed textures that are very cool. The water looks nice, and even though some of the textures aren't exactly indicative of what they're linked to, like the flat boost panel and ramp, those kinds of textures give the track a ton of identity. The item boxes are cool as well. Moving on to the design, it's short, unique, and open, and I like it. It's very unique in the sense that it has elements like forced off-road at the start similar to Shy Guy Beach, but you can trick off it here instead. It's open in the sense that there are a ton of random cuts you can take that normally wouldn't be possible for a CTGP track. For example, the boost ramp on the ground making it possible to fly over the wall. It's really hard to get the trick off of the boost ramp, but this kind of shortcut is very interesting to see for a track like this. It really encourages the racer to explore and find the fastest way to complete laps. There's also a cannon into a middle section with the mushroom pad jumping out, so you can really just fly over walls if you felt like it. You can also do a whole lap in the inside water section even if there's no real reason to. It really encourages the racers to do whatever they like, and I can see it working really well in Formula Kart Wii, where some racers might get bored and would want to try and go for some cool strats after 50 laps. Overall, the track is unique and very neat, and I think it's a solid course with many cool ideas, and considering this is a debut track, I am impressed and excited to see where Villain goes from here. Great track. Alright, now that the main segment is out of the way, let's dive right into the rapid fire showcase. This is the part of the video where I give some quick recommendations to tracks and other creations that I didn't have much to say on, but still deserve to be shown. Let's get started. Tanky Online, The Word is on the Screen by Whacker. This is a battle stage based on a map of the same name from the game Tanky Online. I'm not familiar with the game, but I do gotta admit this is a very nice battle stage with the detailed Warzone-like setting and many areas for battles to take part in. The stage actually released last month and I happened to miss it somehow, but it got updated this month and Whacker also released this character texture, the Tanky Online Hornet/Railgun. It's pretty cool and I really like the animations. Also, this comes with some custom music. Isn't that something? Pride Kart Wii by Grimm. This is a distribution released during Pride Month celebrating LGBTQ pride. Basically, every Nitro track in the game got a retexture based on every form of gender identity and sexuality. For example, genderqueer Moo Meadows, lesbian Toads Factory, bisexual DK Summit, and gender fluid Moonview Highway. You can also turn on pride items, which allows you to put any pride flag of your choosing over all your items. A fitting upload for Pride Month, and I'd like to give a big shout out to all my fruity viewers out there. Stay fresh. Ohio by Flint. Yes! Yes! Delfino by Altair Yoshi. I've never covered a font on the series before, but yeah, Altair Yoshi uploaded a custom font file you can use to make your Mario Kart Wii font the same as Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxies. If that interests you, check it out. I did have a ton to say on this actually, but I decided I had to restrict myself for this video as I wouldn't want this to be 10 minutes longer than it already is. 3DS Rainbow Road by ZPL. ZPL decided to release another 3DS track this month, Rainbow Road, and he did the same thing of really flattening the track to make it more suitable for Wii racing. I didn't have a ton to say on this compared to Bowser's Castle. I do like this a little more than the CTGP version, but ultimately this has never been a 3DS track that I've liked, so it's hard for me to have a big stance on that regardless. It's an interesting concept and it was well executed by ZPL. N64 Koopa Troopa Beach by ZPL. Another ZPL retro, and yeah, it's probably my favorite version of N64 Koopa Troopa Beach, but it's N64 Koopa Troopa Beach. If you needed a version of N64 Koopa Troopa Beach, then this has the great lighting and the pacing that you'd want to see, but I don't have much else to say beyond that. Umbreon's Minecraft Pikmin Nights at Rick and Morty Cities 2 South Card Castle Among Us Judgment Extravaganza The Experience by Brophone, Carry On, David Slayton, Aegis 406, Kiwi Power Green, Sharky, Slippery Mac, Louis Jack Fan, and I'm Zap G. This track got updated after its CT Jelly submission, and it's improved, let's say. Despite everything surrounding the track, this is honestly pretty fun to drive, and there's a lot of depth to it. I mean, distinct sections with different design ideas, topical references, and many pathways. What's not to love? If this looks like it interests you, I'd check it out. It's certainly an experience. Shroom Shores by Quistorian. In February's Wiki Showcase, I covered Empty Space by MKWii, which was intended to be his send-off track before quitting CTs. Well, he's come back to the community now under the new Quistorian alias, but notably he intends on releasing tracks more sporadically, and he's gonna stay more distant from the community. I'm happy to see him back after watching his update video, and the track he came back with was pretty interesting. This was originally a track by Vulcanist 2 in 2010 that was designed and posted about on some old forums, but the track was abandoned until Quistorian picked it up and he completed the track from scratch 12 years after its concept was announced. Did it live up to the hype? Listen, 12 years is a long time. It's kind of funny to think about that a track that took 12 years to make would be as simple as this, but don't get me wrong, this is still a very good track. It has a unique visual style for a mushroom course and it drives good. I especially like the finished pole line with the mushrooms holding up the banner, but I wish I had more to say on the track considering who made it and the story behind how it came to be. I still highly recommend this one for anyone interested, and I'll be sure to keep up with Quistorian's new output. Choco Canyon by Circadian Turnip. This is the author's debut track on the wiki, and this is very nice. It was originally intended to be a version of SNES Choco Island 2, but was rebranded after the author thought it deviated too much from the original. But the design is nice and dynamic with cool shortcuts. The track is fun to drive, and the visuals are unique and interesting. This is very promising for a debut track. GBA Riverside Park by ZBL. Riverside Park has always been an unfortunate track for me since the cuts on the original were so massive and made it a huge luck track. This made it hard to enjoy playing the CTGP version online. This version by ZBL, however, is very nice with a more distinct visual style, more dynamic modeling, and more interesting cuts as there's a shroomless you can do on this one, making it more balanced. If you like Riverside Park, I'd check this one out for sure as it's probably my favorite version so far. This was submitted to CTGP as well, so it'll be interesting to see how it fares there. Morphing Wilderness by Kozakira and Tarza129. This was a track made for the 5th and final edition of David Slayton's First Come First Serve challenge that I've mentioned on the series quite a few times before. This track has a nice ice theme and a short design, with some cool elements like the split path in the cave and the row of ramps off the top path. This is a pretty interesting track for Kozakira's catalog as he has a very distinct SketchUp style for most of his tracks, but this is instead opting for a more dynamic modeling style. The wiki labels Tarza129 as only a designer, which usually means Kozakira was the sole modeler, but who knows. Regardless, I think this is a nice style that he could experiment with more in the future if that's something that interests him. Lily Pad Leap by ZPL and Royal Crown. This is another commission track by ZPL, and it was commissioned by Royal Crown, the other author attached to the track. It has some nice lily pad theming and some great visuals. The design is very simple, and it's a 5-lap track as well, but it's still solid and fun to drive, definitely worth a mention. I'm happy to see ZPL's commission business going really well so far. The grind set is real. And finally, $19 Fortnite card by Joker03 Gamer. Who wants it? And with that being said, let's move on to the last part of the video, the awards. The award for the best visuals of the month is going to go to the Jungle Ruins update by SpearX5544, Bugsy, and Jasper. I really like the direction that SpearX took with the enhancements for Bugsy, and I'm looking forward to seeing the update in CTGP, hopefully. The award for the most amazing creation of the month is going to go to $19 Fortnite card by Joker03 Gamer, self-explanatory. The award for the best retro track of the month is going to go to 3DS Bowser's Castle by ZPL. ZPL's retro game was crazy this month, and this was my favorite out of all of his. Definitely my favorite version of 3DS Bowser's Castle, and I don't see it getting much better than this point because this is almost perfect for me. And finally, the award for the best custom track of the month is going to go to Ohio by... Oh, I read that wrong. Shy Guy Skies by Squire Turnbull and David Slane. These two have done a lot for the community this year, and I can't wait for what else they have in store for 2022. Awesome stuff, guys. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and watching the whole video. As always, the wiki links and YouTube pages for all the authors I covered are in the description if you guys would like to support them. If you enjoyed the video, it'd be appreciated if you hit the like button. It does a lot for the video to get it out there. I try and improve my videos with every upload too, so if you enjoyed this one, then you should subscribe since you'll enjoy the next one more. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.